Today we're going to be talking about colonial culture in video number 4 of Chapter 5, Colonial Society on the Eve of the Revolution. Art and culture still had very European tastes, especially British, in the colonies during this time period. There were some colonial contributions. John Trumbull was a painter, and he was an American painter during this time period. Charles Willson Peale was also known for his portrait of George Washington, and he ran a museum. Benjamin West and John Singleton Copley were also famous painters from the time period. We'll discuss their paintings in class. Colonial craftsmanship was developing during this time period also, and this is an example of a painted wooden chest made by the Pennsylvania Dutch. Other colonial contributions included architecture, which was largely imported and modified to meet peculiar conditions in the New World. The log cabin was borrowed from Sweden. In 1720, the red brick Georgian style was introduced. Noteworthy literature of the time period was the poetry of an enslaved Phillis Wheatley, and Benjamin Franklin wrote Poor Richard's Almanac, and we'll look at both of these in class today. Science was slowly making progress as well. A few botanists, mathematicians, and astronomers won repute. Benjamin Franklin was considered the only first-rank scientist produced in the American colonies. This is a picture of a British painting made to make fun of the era's preoccupation with electricity. Americans were generally too poor to buy books and too busy to read. The Byrd family of Virginia had the largest collection, which was about 4,000 volumes. Ben Franklin established in Philadelphia the first privately supported circulating library, and by 1776 there were about 50 public libraries and collections supported by subscription. Printing presses during this time period first printed pamphlets, leaflets, and journals. About 40 newspapers existed on the eve of the Revolution. Newspapers were a powerful agency for airing colonial grievances and rallying opposition. The John Peter Zenger trial, which took place in 1734 to 1735, involved John Peter Zenger, who was a printer, criticizing the corrupt royal governor. The Zenger decision in the trial helped establish the doctrine that true statements about public officials could not be prosecuted as libel. It was a banner achievement for the freedom of the press and for the health of democracy, and it pointed the way for the open discussion which is required by a diverse society. Politics was forming during this time period as well. There were 3 kinds of colonial governors. By 1775, 8 colonies had royal governors who were appointed by the king. 3 had governors that were selected by proprietors, and those were Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. Connecticut and Rhode Island elected their own governors under their self-governing charters. Each colony had a 2-house legislature. The upper house was appointed by the crown in 8 royal colonies and by the proprietor in 3 proprietary colonies. It was chosen by voters in 2 self-governing colonies. The lower house was the popular branch, elected by the people or the property owners. In some colonies, the backcountry areas were seriously underrepresented and resented the colonial elite. This is a picture titled The Hunting Party in New Jersey. Fox hunting during this time period became an organized sport among the aristocratic. Self-taxation through representation was a privilege Americans cherished above most others. London generally left the colonial governors to the mercies of the legislatures. Colonial assemblies asserted authority over the governors by threatening to withhold their salaries. Administration at the local level varied. County governments remained the rule in the South, while town meetings predominated in New England. The middle colonies used a mixture of the 2 forms. Town meetings with open discussion and open voting were a cradle of self-government. The ballot was by no means a birthright, and that means voting. Upper classes, fearful of democratic excesses, were unwilling to grant the ballot to everyone. By 1775, still religious and property qualifications were in effect. About half of adult white males were disenfranchised as a result of not owning property. But the right to vote was not impossible to attain because it was easy to acquire land. Yet eligible voters often did not exercise this privilege. Instead, they deferred to the decisions of the elite. By 1775, America was not a true democracy socially, economically, or politically, but the colonies were far more democratic than in Europe. Democratic seeds were planted, later bringing forth a lush harvest. This is a picture of people partaking in the popular game of billiards, which was brought over by the Dutch and English settlers and was widespread in local taverns throughout the colonies. Everyday life, for the most part, was drab and tedious in the colonies. Food was plentiful, but the diet was coarse and monotonous. Basic comforts were lacking, and amusement was eagerly pursued where time and customs permitted. By 1775, British North America looked like a patchwork quilt. Each colony was slightly different, but all were stitched together by common origins, common ways of life, and common beliefs in toleration, economic development, and self-rule. All were physically separated from the seat of imperial authority, which means all were very far away from the king, who was in England. And these facts will actually set the stage for the struggle to unite the colonies. And we'll discuss more about the struggle to unite the colonies